"Excuse me, the service entrance is around back. Staff aren't allowed through the main entrance." The words cut through the elegant foyer of Luminous Restaurant like a knife through butter. Around them, guests in designer cocktail dresses and tailored suits swept through the entrance, valets whisking away keys to Mercedes and Teslas, the gentle murmur of wealth and privilege filling the space. Judge Elena Vasquez looked up from her phone, 7:23 p.m., Saturday, November 18, 2025, and met the eyes of the young man blocking her path. He wore a slim-cut charcoal suit with a name tag that read Brandon Mitchell, event coordinator. She was holding a simple black purse and wearing a modest navy dress from Macy's, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a practical bun. No jewelry except small pearl earrings and a plain watch. To Brandon, she looked exactly like what he assumed. "Help. I'm sorry," Elena said quietly. "The catering entrance," Brandon repeated, already turning back to his clipboard. "You need to check in with the service manager. They'll tell you where to set up." Behind Elena, a young white couple in their 30s breezed past, the woman's Louboutins clicking on marble. No one stopped them. No one questioned their right to be there. Elena stood very still. She'd been a federal judge for 18 years. Before that, a prosecutor for 12. She'd faced down cartel lawyers, corrupt politicians, and death threats. But this casual assumption, this reflexive categorization based on how she looked, this never got easier. "I'm not catering staff," Elena said, her voice level and clear. Brandon finally looked up, his expression shifting from distracted to annoyed. "All vendors need to use the service entrance. It's fire code. I'm not a vendor. I'm a guest." His skepticism was palpable. "This is a private event. Invitation only. The Hartwell Foundation Gala." "I know what event it is," Elena said. "I'm invited." That's when it started to go very, very wrong. 3 hours earlier, Elena had debated what to wear for nearly 30 minutes, an unusual indecision for a woman who'd argued before the Supreme Court twice. The invitation had specified cocktail attire, but Elena's closet held mostly work clothes, power suits, judicial robes, and casual weekend wear, jeans, comfortable sweaters for her garden. The space between, the language of social events and fundraising galas, that was territory she'd never quite mastered. Or perhaps, she admitted to herself, territory she'd never been fully welcomed into. She'd chosen the navy dress because it was appropriate, comfortable, and, she thought, wouldn't attract attention. Elena had learned early in her career that being the first Latina federal judge in her district meant walking a constant tightrope. Too formal, and she was trying too hard. Too casual, and she was unprofessional. Too expensive, and she was corrupt or above her station. Too modest, and she was, well, as she was about to discover, assumed to be the help. Her daughter Sophia had called while Elena was getting ready, FaceTiming from her apartment in Boston where she was finishing her medical residency. "Memmy, please tell me you're wearing the St. John suit I got you for your birthday." "It's too much," Elena had said, smoothing down the navy dress. "It's a $5,000 plate fundraiser. Nothing is too much. I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm going because I support the foundation's work with immigrant youth legal services." Sophia had sighed, that particular sigh that daughters reserve for mothers who refuse to play the games that society demands. "You've donated $2.3 million to that foundation over 8 years. You're not just supporting their work, you're funding it. You could show up in a ball gown and tia. Rah. That's exactly why I'm wearing the navy dress." Elena had ended the call, grabbed her simple black purse, the one she'd carried for 6 years, the leather worn at the corners, and headed out. She'd chosen to drive herself rather than hire a car service. The restaurant was only 20 minutes from her home in the suburbs, and Elena had always preferred independence. Her car, a 10-year-old Honda Accord with 147,000 miles, was practical, reliable, and invisible. just like Elena preferred to be. She'd worked her entire life to be judged on her merit, her intelligence, her record. Not her appearance, not her background, not the fact that her parents had crossed the border from Mexico with nothing but hope and determination, working brutal hours in agricultural fields so their daughter could have opportunities they'd never dreamed of. Elena had graduated valedictorian from UCLA, top 5% of her class at Stanford Law, built a reputation as a fierce but fair prosecutor, became the youngest person ever appointed to the federal bench in her jurisdiction at age 39. She'd done everything right. And still, 33 years after her parents arrived in California, she was being directed to the service entrance. Luminous Restaurant occupied the entire ground floor of the Century Tower in downtown Sacramento, a building whose penthouse condos started at $4 million. The restaurant itself was a masterpiece of modern design, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, Edison bulbs casting warm amber light over reclaimed wood and brushed steel, an open kitchen where celebrity chef Marcus Webb presided over a brigade of white-coated cooks. The restaurant had been featured in Bon Appetit, won a James Beard Award, and maintained a 3-month waiting list for reservations. Tonight, for the Hartwell Foundation Gala, the entire space had been rented out, $35,000 for the venue alone, not including the $500 per person dinner. Elena had arrived at exactly 7:23 p.m., fashionably late as was her habit. She preferred to enter events after they'd begun, when her arrival wouldn't draw attention, when she could slip into her seat and simply enjoy the evening. Instead, she'd walked through the heavy glass doors into a soaring 2-story foyer and immediately encountered Brandon Mitchell. He stood with a clipboard and an iPad, checking names against the guest list. 2 hostesses in elegant black dresses flanked him, ready to guide approved guests to the main dining room. A bouncer type in a dark suit stood near the elevators, private security for the event. Elena had watched 3 couples pass through Brandon's checkpoint in the 30 seconds before he'd stopped her. All white, all dripping with obvious wealth, Rolex watches, Chanel bags, custom tailoring. All waved through with smiles. Then Brandon had seen Elena, middle-aged Latina woman, department store dress, worn purse, and his brain had made an instant calculation. Service staff. Not a guest. Definitely not someone who belonged in the main dining room with his clients. "I'm not catering staff," Elena repeated now, keeping her voice level. "I'm a guest. Elena Vasquez. I should be on your list." Brandon's finger scrolled down his iPad. His frown deepened. "I don't see an Elena Vasquez. Try Judge Elena Vasquez." His expression flickered. Was that surprise? Doubt. But he scrolled again. Still not seeing it. One of the hostesses, a young blonde woman named Ashley according to her name tag, leaned over to look at the iPad. "Did you RSVP?" she asked Elena, her tone suggesting this was obviously the problem. Sometimes people just assume they can show up without confirming. "I RSVP'd 6 weeks ago," Elena said. "Through the website or by mail." "Website." Ashley exchanged a glance with Brandon. "Sometimes the online system has glitches. Especially with." She trailed off, but the implication hung in the air. Especially with what? Elena wanted to ask. "Especially with people like me." "Look," Brandon said, his patience clearly wearing thin. A line was forming behind Elena, other guests arriving, beginning to notice the hold-up. "I can't let you in without confirmation. If you want to wait over there," he gestured to a bench near the elevators, "I can try to reach the Foundation's executive director and verify. But it might take a while." Elena felt the familiar weight settle in her chest. The weight of having to prove herself. Again. Always. She could end this right now. She carried her judicial credentials in her purse. She could pull them out, show her federal court ID, let Brandon realize his mistake. But something stopped her. She wanted to see how far this would go. She wanted to document, with complete clarity, What happened when someone like her showed up at a place like this? I'll wait, Elena said quietly. She moved to the bench, pulled out her phone, sent a quick text to her law clerk, Daniel, who was attending the gala with his wife. Arrived. Having some trouble at entrance. Maybe a few minutes late. Daniel's response was immediate. Everything okay? We'll see, Elena typed. She sat on that bench for 17 minutes. During that time, she watched 23 couples and individuals arrive. All of them white except for 2 Asian couples and 1 black man in an expensive suit. All of them processed through Brandon's checkpoint without incident. Some of them didn't even show ID, just gave their names, got checked off, walked in. Elena watched a woman arrive in yoga pants and a designer hoodie, clearly coming straight from some upscale workout class, and get waved through with a laugh. Love the casual look, Mrs. Henderson. She watched a young man, barely 25, show up 15 minutes late in jeans and a blazer, and get greeted like royalty. Mr. Carrington, your father was asking for you. But Elena sat on that bench in her Mace's dress, holding her worn purse, salt and pepper hair in its practical bun. Invisible. Or worse than invisible. Visible only as something that didn't belong. At 7:40 p.m., Brandon finally approached Elena again, now accompanied by a woman in her late 40s wearing a burgundy sheath dress and an expression of professional concern tinged with impatience. Ms. Vasquez, the woman said, notably not using Judge. I'm Catherine Hartwell, Executive Director of the Hartwell Foundation. Brandon tells me there's been some confusion about your invitation. Elena stood. No confusion on my end. I RSVP'd 6 weeks ago. Elena Vasquez. I should be in your system. Catherine pulled out her own phone, tapped through several screens. I'm looking at our confirmed guest list. I'm not seeing your name. Perhaps you could check your donation records, Elena suggested, her voice still calm. I believe I'm one of your larger contributors. Catherine's expression shifted slightly, not quite believing, but curious enough to check. She tapped some more. Her frown deepened. I'm seeing some donations from an E. Vasquez, but those are routed through a law firm. Are you an assistant there? The question landed like a slap. No, Elena said. I'm not an assistant. Then I'm confused about the connection. The connection, Elena interrupted gently, is that I'm Judge Elena Vasquez of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of California. I've been donating to your foundation since its inception, and I RSVP'd to this event 6 weeks ago. The silence that followed was profound. Catherine's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, calculation, and finally, defensive skepticism. I'm sorry, but... Catherine glanced at Elena's dress, her purse, her simple appearance. If you're really a federal judge, surely you have some identification. Around them, other guests were starting to notice. A couple nearby had paused, drinks in hand, watching with unconcealed curiosity. Someone pulled out their phone. Elena couldn't tell if they were checking messages or recording. I have my credentials, Elena said. But I'm curious why you're asking me for them when you didn't ask anyone else who came through that door tonight. We have to verify. You didn't verify Mrs. Henderson in her yoga pants. You didn't verify Mr. Carrington in his jeans. But you need to see my ID. Catherine's face flushed. This is a private event. We have every right to ensure our guests are properly authorized. Then why didn't you stop any of them? Brandon, still hovering nearby, interjected. We're just trying to do our jobs. If you can't provide verification, we'll have to ask you to leave. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. He was probably 28, maybe 30. MBA from somewhere decent, probably. Thought he was good at his job, thought he was protecting his event, thought he was making reasonable decisions. He genuinely didn't see what he was doing. What's your full name? Elena asked him quietly. What? Your full name. For the record. Brandon Mitchell. Why? And yours? Elena turned to Catherine. Catherine Hartwell. Her voice was sharp now, defensive. Look, Judge Vasquez or whoever you are. Federal judges are in the public record, Elena said. You can Google me right now. My photo is on the court website. Catherine hesitated, then pulled out her phone. Typed. Her face went pale. Oh my God, she whispered. Brandon leaned over to look at the screen. His expression transformed from annoyance to horror in real time. But you. He looked at Elena, back at the phone, back at Elena. You don't look like. He stopped himself, but the damage was done. I don't look like what? Elena thought. Like a federal judge? Like someone who belongs here? Like someone who could have anything other than a service job? A small crowd had gathered now. 8, maybe 10 people, maintaining that careful distance that says I'm not involved but I'm definitely watching. One of them, a woman in her 60s with perfect silver hair and diamonds at her throat, stepped forward. Elena, the woman said. Elena Vasquez. Elena recognized her immediately. Marianne Beaumont. Old money. Stanford trustee. Her family's name on half the buildings in Sacramento. They'd served together on a bar association committee 3 years ago. Hello, Marianne, Elena said. Marianne looked at Catherine and Brandon with the particular expression wealthy white women deploy when they are about to destroy someone socially. What exactly is happening here? There was some confusion about Judge Vasquez's invitation, Catherine began. Confusion. Marianne's voice could have frozen water. Elena Vasquez is one of the most respected judges in California. She's probably donated more to your little foundation than everyone in this room combined. And you have her waiting in the lobby like. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Everyone knew what Elena had been treated like. Perhaps we could discuss this somewhere more private, Catherine said, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. She was already calculating the damage, the witnesses, the phones, the social media exposure. Too late, Elena thought. Way too late. But she nodded. Lead the way. They moved through a side door, down a hallway with framed reviews and awards, into a small office that smelled of expensive leather and printer toner. Catherine's office, clearly, desk cluttered with grant applications and donor files, walls covered with photos of smiling youth holding certificates and scholarship letters. Brandon followed them in, along with Marianne, who'd attached herself to Elena's side like a protective bulldog. 2 other people had also slipped in, Daniel, Elena's law clerk, who'd come looking for her, and a younger woman holding her phone at an angle that suggested she was recording. This is a private conversation, Catherine said to the woman with the phone. This is a public incident, the woman replied. She was maybe 25, Latina, dressed in server's attire, white shirt, black pants. A name tag read Rosa, server. And I'm documenting it. You're staff. This doesn't concern you. I'm staff, which means I see exactly how people like Judge Vasquez get treated when you don't think anyone important is watching. Rosa's voice was steady, but Elena could hear the anger underneath. I'm recording for the same reason Elena sat on that bench for 17 minutes. So there's proof. Elena met Rosa's eyes. A moment of recognition passed between them. 2 women who'd learned that existing while brown meant always needing receipts. Judge Vasquez, Catherine began, sitting behind her desk in a power position that wasn't going to help her. I apologize for the confusion. It wasn't confusion, Elena said quietly. Let's be accurate about what happened. Your event coordinator saw me, made assumptions based on my appearance, and directed me to the service entrance. When I insisted I was a guest, I was questioned, detained, and asked to provide ID, something you didn't require from any white guests arriving during the same time period. We require ID from anyone we can't verify. But you didn't try to verify me. You assumed I didn't belong and worked backward from there. Catherine's mouth opened, closed. Brandon looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. "This is ridiculous," someone said from the doorway. They all turned. A man in his 60s, silver-haired and commanding in a custom tuxedo, stepped into the office. His name tag read Richard Hartwell, Foundation President. Catherine's husband, Elena recognized. And from his expression, he'd just been informed of the situation and was not happy. "Judge Vasquez," Richard said, his voice smooth with the particular authority of men who've never been questioned. "I understand there's been an unfortunate misunderstanding." "Not a misunderstanding," Marianne interjected. "Discrimination. Let's call it what it is." Richard's jaw tightened. "That's a very serious accusation." "It's a very accurate description," Marianne shot back. "Mrs. Beaumont, with all due respect, you weren't there." "No, but they were." Marianne gestured to the growing crowd in the doorway. "And apparently several of them have video." Richard's face went white. "Video?" Rosa held up her phone. 17 minutes of Judge Vasquez sitting on that bench while white guests walked past her. All time-stamped. Already backed up to the cloud. You can't." Richard looked at Catherine, who looked at Brandon, who looked like he was going to be sick. "Actually, I can," Rosa said. "This is a public area of a private business. No expectation of privacy. California's a two-party consent state for conversations, but I didn't record any private conversations, just public behavior in a public space." Elena looked at Rosa with new appreciation. Law student, maybe. Or someone who'd had to learn her rights the hard way. "Judge Vasquez," Richard tried again. "Obviously there's been a terrible mistake. Please, let us make this right. Come into the gala, be our honored guest." "For $5,000. Elena asked quietly. "What?" "That's the price of admission to this gala. $5,000 per person. Did you think I couldn't afford it? Is that why I was stopped?" "No, of course not. Or was it because when you look at me, you see someone who serves food, not someone who eats it? Someone who cleans rooms, not someone who books them? Someone who works in a courthouse, not someone who presides in one?" The silence was absolute. Elena reached into her purse, that worn black purse that had been part of the problem, and pulled out her phone, pulled up her banking app, turned it to show Richard. "This is my checking account balance," she said. "I'm showing you this not because I should have to, but because you need to understand the assumptions you made. That balance represents 30 years of work, of earning a federal judge's salary, of investing carefully and living modestly. I could buy a ticket to this gala every night for a year and not notice the expense." She switched screens. "This is my donation history to your foundation. $2.3 million over 8 years. Scholarships for 73 students. Legal aid for 120 families. Funding for 2 full-time staff attorneys." Richard stared at the screen. Catherine had gone gray. "But when I walked through your door wearing a department store dress and a 6-year-old purse," Elena continued, "you saw someone who didn't belong. Someone who needed to be redirected. Questioned. Controlled." She put her phone away. "So no, Mr. Hartwell, I won't be your honored guest tonight. I'm going to go home, have dinner with my daughter over FaceTime, and decide what to do about all of this." "Judge Vasquez, please," Catherine started. "Please what? Pretend this didn't happen. Make it easy for you." Elena's voice was still quiet, but it carried the weight of 18 years on the federal bench. "I sat on that bench for 17 minutes. 17 minutes watching people who looked nothing like me walk past without being questioned. Do you know how many times I've had that experience in my life? How many times I've been assumed to be the help, the translator, the cleaning lady?" She looked at each of them in turn. "I'm a federal judge. I have credentials. I have power. I have resources to fight back. But what about the women who really do work in your kitchens, who serve your food, who park your cars? What happens to them when they are treated like this? Who documents it for them? who backs up their videos to the cloud. Rosa's grip on her phone tightened, her eyes shining. This isn't about me, Elena said. This is about a system that looks at brown skin and salt and pepper hair and a mace's dress and makes instant judgments about worth, about belonging, about who deserves respect and who doesn't. We never meant, Brandon tried. What you meant doesn't matter, Elena cut him off. What you did matters. What you'll do next matters. She turned to leave. Judge Vasquez, Richard called after her. What are you going to do? Elena paused at the door, looked back at him. I'm going to think about it, she said. And then I'm going to make some phone calls. The thing that scared them most, Elena knew, wasn't what she'd do tomorrow. It was that they had no idea what she was capable of doing. Elena made it to her Honda Accord before the fury hit her. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, calculated kind. The kind that had made her one of the most effective prosecutors in California before she took the bench. She sat in her car, old, practical, invisible, and let herself feel it for exactly 60 seconds. Then she picked up her phone and started making calls. First call, Sophia. Memi, how's the gala? I didn't make it inside. A pause. What happened? Elena told her. Calmly. Precisely. Chronologically. Sophia's response was immediate and furious. I'm getting on a plane right now. No, you're not. You have a shift tomorrow. I'm fine. You're not fine. This is bullshit, Mummy. Total bullshit. It is, Elena agreed. But I'm handling it. How? I'm still deciding. But Sophia, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to pull together every donation record, every communication I've had with the Hartwell Foundation. Everything. Send it all to my personal email tonight. Done. What else? That's it for now. I love you. Love you too, Memi. And for the record, that navy dress looks beautiful on you. They are idiots. Second call, Daniel, her law clerk, who'd stayed at the gala and was texting updates in real time. Judge, the whole place is talking about what happened. The servers are passing the story around. Rosa sent the video to at least 20 people already. Good, Elena said. Good. Yes. Document everything. Names, reactions, who says what. I want a full report on my desk Monday morning. You're going to? I don't know yet, but I'm gathering information. Third call, Marcus Chen, her oldest friend, who'd made partner at the biggest law firm in Sacramento 3 years ago. Elena, what's wrong? She told him. Holy shit, Marcus said when she finished. Please tell me you're not going to let this slide. I'm not, but I need to know something first. What do you know about Luminous Restaurant? The restaurant where the gala was. Let me think. She heard typing in the background. Okay, interesting. It's owned by a restaurant group called Prestige Dining Consortium. They've got 6 high-end places in California. Corporate structure is him. What? They are partially publicly traded through a hospitality REIT. Luminous itself is the flagship. And get this, they're in the middle of trying to expand. Raising capital for 3 new locations. Very dependent on their reputation and investor confidence. Who's the majority owner? More typing. CEO is a guy named Jonathan Prescott. But majority ownership is through the REIT, which means, oh, this is interesting. What? The REIT is managed by Pacific Western Investment Group. You know who sits on their board? Tell me. Thomas Liu. Federal Judge, 9th Circuit. Elena smiled for the first time that evening. Is that so? Elena, what are you thinking? I'm thinking I want to know everything about Prestige Dining Consortium by Monday morning. Every lawsuit, every health code violation, every complaint filed with the EEOC or the State Labor Commission. That's going to take some digging. You have 48 hours and unlimited budget. Bill it to me personally. Elena. Marcus, how many times have you told me I'm too nice? Too forgiving? Many times. But you're scaring me a little right now. Good. Get me that information. Fourth call, a number she rarely used. Private cell phone of Alejandra Torres, the most feared employment discrimination attorney in California. Judge Vasquez. Alejandra answered on the first ring. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? Alejandra, how would you like to take on a restaurant group with very deep pockets and very bad practices? I'm listening. Elena told her the story. Alejandra's silence when she finished was more eloquent than any words. They have no idea what they just did, do they? Alejandra finally said. Not yet. But they will. What do you want from me? I want you to find every person who's ever been discriminated against by Prestige Dining Consortium. Every server who was told to hide their accent. Every host who was told they didn't have the right look. Every manager who complained about discriminatory policies. Find them, document them, and get them ready to talk. This is going to be big. It needs to be. This isn't just about me. This is about every person who looks like me, like Rosa, like the thousands of people who work in service industries and get treated like they are invisible unless they are convenient. I'm in. Consider it pro bono. This is the kind of case I live for. Bill me anyway. Full rate. This needs to be done right. Understood. I'll start reaching out to my contacts at workers' rights organizations. If there are stories, we'll find them. Fifth call, the one Elena had been avoiding. Chief Judge Margaret Reynolds, her boss and mentor on the federal bench. Elena, is everything all right? It's Saturday night. Margaret, I need to tell you something that happened tonight. And I need your advice on how to handle it. Elena explained. She heard Margaret's breathing get progressively more controlled, always a bad sign. Elena, first let me say I'm appalled. Second, let me ask, what are you planning to do? I honestly don't know yet. Part of me wants to file an official complaint. Part of me wants to use my position to shine a very bright light on their practices. Part of me just wants to make sure it never happens to anyone else. All valid responses. But Elena, whatever you decide, make sure it's judicial. We have to hold ourselves to higher standards. Even when the system failed me. Especially then. Because when we take off the robe, when we're just regular citizens, that's when we prove whether we actually believe in the principles we uphold. Justice applies to everyone, or it means nothing. Elena closed her eyes. You're right. Of course I'm right. I'm your chief judge. Now, do you want my unofficial advice as your friend? Yes. Burn them to the ground. Professionally and legally, of course. But make sure they understand exactly what they did and who they did it to. And then make sure every other business in California knows that this is what happens when you judge people by their clothes instead of their character. Elena smiled. Thank you, Margaret. Keep me posted. And Elena, I'm proud of you. Not for how you handled tonight, though you did well, but for who you've always been. Your parents would be so proud. The call ended. Elena sat in her car, in the parking garage of a building she'd been turned away from, and felt the path forward crystallize. She wasn't going to just file a complaint. She was going to dismantle the entire system that made tonight possible. While Elena sat in her car making phone calls, Rosa's video had already started spreading. First, to the other servers at Luminous, a tight-knit group of mostly immigrants and first-generation Americans who knew exactly what they'd watched happen. Then to the servers' friends, family, partners. Then to social media. Rosa had uploaded it to Twitter at 8:15 p.m. with a simple caption. Federal judge detained at Luminous Restaurant Sac while white guests walk right past. This is what discrimination looks like. #service industry, #discrimination, #justice for Judge Vasquez. By 9 p.m., it had 12,000 views. By 10 p.m., 45,000 views and climbing. By midnight, It had been picked up by 3 local news stations and was trending on Twitter in California. The video showed everything. Elena sitting calmly on that bench. White guests streaming past. Brandon and Catherine questioning her. The growing crowd. Rosa's steady narration explaining what was happening. And critically, it showed the timestamp. 17 minutes. Quantified, documented, undeniable. The comments section exploded. This is what happens every single day to people who don't have Judge Vasquez's credentials. I'm a Latina attorney and this has happened to me so many times. The way she stayed calm through all of it. That's dignity. Meanwhile, the white woman in yoga pants walked right in. The double standard is insane. Imagine being a federal judge and still having to prove you belong. Other videos started surfacing. Someone had filmed from inside the foyer, getting a different angle. A guest who'd been near the office door had audio of part of the confrontation. By Sunday morning, there were 4 different videos from 4 different angles, all time-stamped, all corroborating the same story. The local news had reached out to the Hartwell Foundation for comment. They'd issued a statement around 11 p.m. The Hartwell Foundation regrets any misunderstanding that occurred at our Saturday evening gala. We have the utmost respect for Judge Elena Vasquez and are deeply sorry for any inconvenience. We are reviewing our event management procedures to ensure nothing like this happens again. The response online was savage. Misunderstanding is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Inconvenience. She was detained for being brown in a nice dress. Reviewing procedures equals we got caught. By Monday morning at 6 a.m., when Elena was drinking coffee and reading the coverage on her iPad, the story had made national news. CNN, federal judge says she was profiled at California charity gala. Washington Post, California judge stopped at restaurant event, raising questions about discrimination in service industry. New York Times, in the age of Zoom, a judge's in-person appearance triggers assumptions about race and class. Elena's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Colleagues, friends, other judges, advocacy groups, media outlets. She ignored all of it and focused on the documents Sophia had sent, 8 years of donation records, emails with Catherine Hartwell discussing programming and grants, personal notes Elena had written about students she'd helped. $2.3 million in total donations. 73 scholarship recipients, many of whom had written her thank you notes over the years. The Foundation's own literature described Elena as one of their most generous and dedicated supporters. And they'd made her sit on a bench for 17 minutes. Elena's second call of the morning was to her financial advisor. I want to establish a new foundation, she said, dedicated to supporting immigrant workers in the service industry. Legal aid, scholarship funding, workplace discrimination cases. Starting capital will be $5 million from my personal savings. That's a significant commitment, Elena. It's necessary. Get me the paperwork started. I want it operational within 60 days. Third call, back to Alejandra Torres. I found 6, Alejandra said without preamble. 6 current or former employees of Prestige Dining Consortium restaurants willing to talk about discrimination. 2 servers who were told to tone down their accents. 1 host who was fired after complaining about being asked to seat Latino guests in less visible sections. 2 kitchen workers who filed wage theft claims. And 1 manager who left after being told to hire servers who looked more upscale, which apparently meant whiter. Document everything, Elena said. And Alejandra, I want to talk to each of them personally. You're going to? I'm going to listen to their stories. And then I'm going to help them tell those stories in the most effective way possible. Monday morning, Prestige Dining Consortium headquarters. Jonathan Prescott, CEO of Prestige Dining Consortium, walked into his office at 7:30 a.m. Monday morning to find his assistant, his PR director, and his general counsel waiting for him. We have a problem, his PR director said. I'm aware, Jonathan replied. He'd been up since 5 a.m. dealing with emails and phone calls. The Vasquez situation. It's worse than a situation. It's a crisis. The video has 11 million views. 11 million. We're trending nationally. The Today Show wants a statement. Our investors are calling. What are our legal exposure? The General Counsel, Patricia Wong, opened her laptop. Potential civil rights violation, though that's a stretch since this wasn't our restaurant's decision. Technically, it was the foundation's event coordinator. But we're the venue, and our staff was involved in the detention. More concerning is what this is uncovering. What do you mean? I mean people are digging. 3 former employees have already posted on social media about discriminatory experiences at our restaurants. 2 others have retained attorneys. And she hesitated. A law firm reached out this morning asking to discuss a potential class action related to discriminatory practices. Jonathan felt something cold settle in his stomach. What law firm? Torres and Associates. Alejandra Torres is the lead attorney. Jesus Christ. She's a shark. Yes. And she doesn't take cases she doesn't think she can win. Jonathan sat down heavily. Okay. Options. What are our options? His PR director pulled up a presentation. We issue a full apology. We announce a comprehensive review of all our procedures. We offer sensitivity training for all staff. We make a substantial donation to a relevant cause. We do whatever Judge Vasquez wants to make this go away. Will that work? Maybe. If we move fast and decisively. But Jonathan, his PR director's face was grim. This is activating something bigger than just our company. People are talking about systemic discrimination in upscale restaurants. They are talking about who gets seated at prime tables, who gets questioned about reservations, who gets assumed to be staff. This could become an industry-wide reckoning. Over one incident. It's never just one incident. That's the point. This incident is proof of what thousands of people experience every day. Judge Vasquez is just the one who had the credibility and platform to make people listen. Patricia, the general counsel, interjected. I've been reviewing our records. In the past 5 years, we've had 14 EEOC complaints filed against our various restaurants. 14. Most settled quietly. But if someone goes digging, they'll find a pattern, Jonathan finished. Exactly. Jonathan looked out his window at the Sacramento skyline. He'd built this company from 1 restaurant to 6. He'd been profiled in Forbes. He'd been celebrated as an innovator in upscale dining. And now he was going to be known as the guy whose restaurant discriminated against a federal judge. Get Judge Vasquez on the phone, he said. Personally. No lawyers, no PR people. Just me and her. Jonathan, that's not advisable. I don't care. Get her on the phone. Elena was reviewing court documents when her phone rang from an unknown Sacramento number. Judge Vasquez, this is Jonathan Prescott, CEO of Prestige Dining Consortium. I'm calling to apologize personally for what happened Saturday night. Mr. Prescott, Elena said calmly. I appreciate the call. What happened was completely unacceptable. It doesn't represent our values or our. Mr. Prescott, may I stop you there? A pause. Of course. I don't want your apology. Not because I'm angry, though I am, but because an apology is just words. What I want is change. Real, measurable, systemic change. I understand. We're prepared to. I'm not finished. I want you to listen to what I'm going to say, and then I want you to think very carefully about your response. I'm listening. Saturday night, your event coordinator looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong. Someone who should use the service entrance. Someone whose word couldn't be trusted when I said I was a guest. He made those judgments in approximately 3 seconds, based entirely on what I looked like. Judge Vasquez. I said I wasn't finished. That young man, Brandon Mitchell, is not an aberration. is a product of your system. A system that creates an environment where those snap judgments seem reasonable, where discrimination feels like good customer service, where keeping people like me out of spaces like yours feels like maintaining standards. Elena's voice was still quiet, but it carried absolute authority. Since Saturday night, I've received calls from 6 of your current or former employees. They've told me about being asked to hide their accents, about being told they don't have the right look for front-of-house positions, about watching white servers get assigned to wealthy tables while servers of color get relegated to corners, about managers who grade them on their ability to code switch and present themselves as less ethnic. Silence on the other end. So here's what I want, Mr. Prescott. I want a full audit of your hiring, promotion, and management practices across all 6 of your restaurants. I want it conducted by an independent firm with expertise in employment discrimination. I want the results made public. And I want a concrete action plan with measurable goals and independent oversight. That's asking a lot. I'm not asking. I'm telling you what needs to happen. Because if it doesn't, I will personally fund every discrimination lawsuit that comes your way. I will support every employee who wants to speak out. And I will make sure that every time someone Googles your restaurants, the first thing they see is the video of your event coordinator directing a federal judge to the service entrance. Judge Vasquez, that sounds like a threat. It's not a threat. It's a promise. But Mr. Prescott, I don't actually want to destroy your company. What I want is for your company to be better. I want it to be a place where people like Rosa, the server who documented what happened to me, can work without being made to feel less than. Where immigrant workers aren't exploited. Where someone's accent or skin color doesn't determine their opportunities. Elena paused. Your choice, Mr. Prescott. You can fight me, or you can work with me. But I promise you, fighting me will be the more expensive option. Another long silence. What would working with you look like? It looks like you commit, publicly, to the audit I described. It looks like you establish an employee advisory board with real power. It looks like you review every policy through the lens of equity. And it looks like you make your restaurants places where what happened to me could never happen to anyone else. And in return, I'll hold off on the lawsuits. I'll give you a chance to get this right. And if you actually do it, if you genuinely commit to change, I'll support you publicly. A judge's endorsement carries weight. She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. You're offering me a way out, he said finally. No, I'm offering you a way forward. There's a difference. I'll need to talk to my board, my lawyers. You have 72 hours. After that, Alejandra Torres files the class action, and we do this the hard way. Elena ended the call. While Elena was talking to Jonathan Prescott, the Hartwell Foundation board was holding an emergency meeting. 8 board members sat around a conference table, with Richard and Catherine Hartwell at the head. The tension was palpable. We need to control the narrative, Richard was saying. This is being blown out of proportion. Blown out of proportion. One of the board members, Dr. James Mitchell, no relation to Brandon, interrupted. Richard, there's a video with 11 million views showing your wife and your event coordinator detaining one of our biggest donors because she's Latina. It wasn't about race. Then what was it about? Asked another board member, Patricia Nguyen. Because I'm looking at this video, and I'm looking at the guests who walked past Judge Vasquez without being questioned, and I'm seeing a pretty clear pattern. Catherine spoke up, her voice strained. We thought she might be catering staff. It was an honest mistake. Honest mistakes don't take 17 minutes, Dr. Mitchell shot back. Honest mistakes don't require multiple levels of verification that you don't ask from anyone else. We're going to lose donors over this, said another board member, Michael Torres. I've already had 3 major contributors call me saying they're reconsidering their support. Richard's face was red. This is ridiculous. One incident, one mistake, and suddenly we're being treated like we're running a discriminatory organization. Are we? Patricia asked quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Are we running a discriminatory organization? She repeated. Because maybe we should answer that question honestly before we figure out damage control. Of course we're not, Richard blustered. Then why have 3 of our scholarship recipients come forward in the last 24 hours to say they felt uncomfortable at our events? Why have 2 of our grantee organizations posted statements distancing themselves from us? Why did our entire volunteer staff, all 12 people, submit resignation letters this morning? Silence. I'll tell you why, Patricia continued. Because what happened to Judge Vasquez wasn't an aberration. It was just the first time someone had the power and platform to make it visible. She pulled out her phone and read from it. This is from one of our scholarship recipients, Maria Gonzalez. She says, I attended the Hartwell Foundation's donor reception last year. I wore my nicest dress, which wasn't very nice by their standards. I was stopped 3 times and asked if I was sure I was in the right place. When I finally made it inside, people kept asking me about my inspiring story of overcoming poverty, like I was there to perform my struggles for their entertainment, not to network as an equal. She looked around the table. That's our foundation. That's what we've built. A place where scholarship recipients are treated like exhibits instead of people. This is getting out of hand, Richard said. We provide tremendous support to underserved communities. We provide money, Dr. Mitchell interrupted. That's not the same as providing respect. The meeting devolved into argument. Shouting. Accusations. Finally, Michael Torres stood up. I'm resigning from the board, he said. Effective immediately. I can't be part of an organization that treats Judge Vasquez, who has given us over $2 million, like a service worker who wandered into the wrong room. And I certainly can't be part of an organization whose leadership is more interested in protecting their reputation than actually addressing the problem. He walked out. 2 other board members followed. Richard and Catherine were left with a gutted board and a reputation in free fall. On Tuesday, Alejandra Torres held a press conference. 6 people sat at a table, 3 servers, 1 host, 1 kitchen manager, and 1 dining room supervisor. All current or former employees of Prestige Dining Consortium restaurants. Alejandra spoke first. These 6 individuals have come forward to share their experiences working for Prestige Dining Consortium. Their stories reveal a pattern of discriminatory practices that have been allowed to persist for years. I'll let them speak for themselves. Rosa went first, the server who documented Elena's detention. I've worked at Luminous Restaurant for 3 years. I'm a good server. I have great reviews. But I'm only ever assigned to certain sections, never the prime window tables, never the high-profile reservations. My manager told me once that I needed to polish my presentation. When I asked what that meant, she said I should think about straightening my hair and maybe losing my accent. She paused, collecting herself. When I saw what happened to Judge Vasquez, I recognized it immediately, because that's how I'm treated every single day. Like I don't quite belong in that space, even though I'm the one serving the food and making the restaurant run. The difference is, I can't fight back. Judge Vasquez could, and she did, and I'm grateful. Next was Carlos, a line cook. I worked at Prestige's downtown location for 2 years. I'm a trained chef. I went to culinary school. I have certifications. But I was never promoted to sous chef, even when positions opened up. My white co-workers with less experience got promoted past me. When I asked why, I was told I didn't have the leadership presence they were looking for. Then Amanda, a former host. I was fired after 3 months. The official reason was not meeting performance standards. The real reason was that I complained when my manager told me to seat Latino families in the back section of the restaurant. I asked why, and she said the owner preferred to have the dining room look more diverse near the windows, meaning white, for people passing by. When I refused, I was written up for insubordination. 2 weeks later, I was fired. The testimonies continued. Specific, detailed, damning. And through it all, cameras rolled, reporters took notes, and the story grew. While Prestige Dining Consortium was imploding, Elena made another call. This one to the California Restaurant Association. Ms. Chen, my name is Elena Vasquez. I'm a federal judge, and I'd like to discuss developing a certification program for equitable dining practices. The executive director was cautious. Judge Vasquez, I'm aware of the situation at Luminous. We're monitoring it closely. I don't want you to monitor it. I want you to do something about it. Restaurant workers, particularly immigrants and people of color, face discrimination every single day. It's systemic, it's pervasive, and your industry has largely turned a blind eye to it. With respect, Judge Vasquez. Let me finish. I'm not trying to destroy the restaurant industry, but I am trying to transform it. I'm proposing a voluntary certification program, Equitable Dining Certified. Restaurants that participate would undergo training, policy review, and independent audits. Those that pass would get a certification they could display prominently. And those that don't participate face increasing scrutiny from workers' rights organizations, employment attorneys, and advocacy groups. Oh, and they'd miss out on partnerships with the $5 million foundation I'm establishing specifically to support immigrant service workers. Silence. You're serious. Completely. I'm giving your industry a chance to get ahead of this. Because what happened to me isn't going to be forgotten. It's going to be the catalyst for a much larger conversation about how service workers are treated. You can shape that conversation, or you can be swept away by it. I'll need to discuss this with our board. You have 48 hours. After that, I'm going to start talking to legislators about mandatory requirements instead of voluntary certification. Elena hung up and smiled. Sometimes being a federal judge meant knowing exactly which pressure points to apply. Wednesday morning, Prestige Dining Consortium announcement. Jonathan Prescott stood in front of a podium at 9 a.m. Wednesday, flanked by his general counsel and a crisis management consultant who looked like she was earning every penny of her fee. Thank you for being here, Jonathan began, reading from a prepared statement. This past weekend, Judge Elena Vasquez had an experience at one of our venues that was completely unacceptable. On behalf of Prestige Dining Consortium, I offer my sincerest apologies to Judge Vasquez and to everyone else who has been affected by discriminatory practices at our restaurants. He paused, took a breath. I've spent the past 3 days listening to current and former employees share their experiences. What I've heard has been disturbing and eye-opening. It's clear that we have allowed a culture to develop in our restaurants that doesn't reflect our stated values of inclusion and respect. Another pause. The cameras were rolling. This would be on every news channel by noon. Today, I'm announcing several immediate actions. First, Prestige Dining Consortium is committing to a full independent audit of our hiring, promotion, and management practices across all 6 restaurants. This audit will be conducted by the Center for Employment Equity, and the results will be made public within 90 days. Second, we are establishing an employee advisory board with representatives from all levels and all restaurants. This board will have real power to review policies, raise concerns, and propose changes. Third, we are partnering with Cornell's School of Hotel Administration to develop comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all staff, from dishwashers to executives. This training will be mandatory, and completion will be tied to employment and advancement. Fourth, we are creating a $2 million fund to compensate employees who have experienced discrimination and to support workforce development programs for immigrant workers in the service industry. And finally, I'm announcing that I will be stepping back from day-to-day operations for the next 6 months while Patricia Wong, our general counsel, serves as interim CEO. I need to demonstrate through actions, not just words, that I'm committed to being part of the solution. The questions from reporters came fast. Mr. Prescott, is Judge Vasquez satisfied with these measures? Judge Vasquez and I have been in communication. She has agreed to serve as an advisor to our reform efforts. But she has made clear that her support is contingent on us following through, not just making promises. What about the class action lawsuit? Attorney Torres and I have agreed to a 90-day pause on litigation while we implement these reforms. If we fail to make meaningful progress, the lawsuit will proceed. Do you admit that your restaurants have been systematically discriminatory? Jonathan hesitated, then spoke honestly. Yes. I think the evidence is clear that we've allowed practices that discriminate against people of color, particularly in front-of-house positions. That ends now. The Hartwell Foundation wasn't so lucky. By Wednesday afternoon, 5 more board members had resigned. 3 major donors had pulled their support. 2 grantee organizations had publicly severed ties. Richard and Catherine Hartwell called an emergency press conference at 3 p.m. After much reflection, Richard read from a statement, "Catherine and I have decided to step down from our leadership roles at the Hartwell Foundation, effective immediately. We will be transferring governance to an independent board and removing our family name from the organization. We deeply regret the pain we caused Judge Elena Vasquez and anyone else who has felt discriminated against at our events. We thought we were serving our community, but we failed to see how our own biases were creating barriers for the very people we claimed to support. The foundation would survive, barely, but completely transformed. New leadership, new policies, new name. The Vasquez Scholarship Foundation for Immigrant Youth. Elena had been asked if she'd permit them to use her name. She'd agreed, on one condition, that scholarship recipients would be involved in every level of decision-making, including the board. The foundation would not be about wealthy white people deciding what was best for immigrant youth. It would be led by immigrant youth themselves. Richard and Catherine accepted without hesitation. They'd lost everything else. Their reputation, their social standing, their sense of moral superiority. All because they'd looked at Elena Vasquez and seen a woman who didn't belong. What Elena had predicted came to pass with startling speed. Within a week, 13 other restaurant workers in California came forward with discrimination stories. 3 more lawsuits were filed against different restaurant groups. The California Restaurant Association, facing mounting pressure, announced the Equitable Dining Certification Program in partnership with Elena's foundation. Within a month, 42 restaurants had signed up for the voluntary program. Those that didn't faced consequences. Activist groups organized dine-outs encouraging customers to avoid restaurants with poor labor practices. Food critics started including equity practices in their reviews. Yelp added a feature allowing workers to rate their employers. The industry was transforming whether it wanted to or not. And at the center of it all was a federal judge in a Macy's dress who'd refused to be invisible. Brandon Mitchell, the event coordinator who'd started it all, disappeared from public view for 3 days after the video went viral. He'd been fired from his position, of course. That happened Monday morning. But the consequences didn't stop there. His face was everywhere. Twitter threads dissecting his body language. TikToks using his words as examples of microaggressions. LinkedIn discussions about unconscious bias using him as a case study. He became, overnight, the face of casual racism in the service industry. On Thursday, he posted a video apology on YouTube. He sat in what appeared to be his apartment, looking exhausted and genuinely shaken. "My name is Brandon Mitchell, and I'm the person in the video who stopped Judge Vasquez at the restaurant. I need to say some things, and I'm not reading from a script or being coached by anyone. These are just my words." He took a breath. What I did was wrong. Not just wrong in the moment, wrong in every way. I saw Judge Vasquez, and I made instant assumptions based on how she looked. I didn't see a federal judge. I didn't see one of the Hartwell Foundation's biggest donors. I saw someone I thought didn't belong, and I acted on that assumption without questioning it. His voice cracked slightly. I've spent the last 4 days reading the comments, watching the response, and most importantly, listening to the stories from people in the service industry about how they are treated. And I'm realizing that I wasn't just having one bad moment. I was enforcing a system I didn't even know I was part of. He looked directly at the camera. I grew up believing I wasn't racist. I voted for progressive candidates. I supported diversity initiatives. But none of that matters because when it came down to an actual moment where I needed to see a Latina woman as someone who belonged in a high-end space, I failed. Completely. I don't know if Judge Vasquez will ever see this. But if she does, I want to say, I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for every time someone made you feel like you didn't belong, like you had to prove yourself, like the color of your skin meant you couldn't possibly be who you said you were. He paused again. I'm going to spend a long time thinking about this. About my biases, about the assumptions I make, about how I can do better. I don't know if I'll ever work in events again. I probably shouldn't. But I'm going to make sure that whatever I do next, I do it with the understanding that what I did to Judge Vasquez, that happens to people every single day. And it needs to stop. The video ended. Elena watched it in her chambers Friday afternoon. She watched it twice. Then she sent a brief email to Brandon's personal address, which her law clerk had tracked down. Mr. Mitchell, I saw your video. Real accountability looks like what you did, not defending, not making excuses, but genuinely reckoning with your actions and their impact. I don't know if you'll work in events again. But I do know this. The restaurant and hospitality industry needs people who understand what you understand now. People who've learned this lesson and won't let others make the same mistakes. If you're genuinely committed to being better, to doing better, I'd encourage you to reach out to the Equitable Dining Certification Program. They are looking for trainers who can speak authentically about unconscious bias because they've lived it. You have a choice. Let this define you, or let this transform you. Choose transformation. Judge Elena Vasquez. Brandon would later say that email saved his life. Rosa, the server who documented everything, was offered 7 job opportunities within 2 weeks. 3 from high-end restaurants eager to show they were different. 2 from hotel management companies. 1 from a restaurant consulting firm. And 1 from Elena herself. I'm establishing a foundation, Elena told Rosa over coffee at a quiet cafe, deliberately not a high-end restaurant. I need someone who understands the service industry from the inside. Someone who knows what workers need, not what wealthy donors think they need. You want me to work for your foundation. I want you to help run it. You'd be director of worker advocacy. Your job would be to make sure we're actually serving the people we claim to serve, not just performative charity. Rosa stared at her. Judge Vasquez, I'm a server. I don't have a degree in nonprofit management or social work or. You have something more valuable. You have lived experience, courage to document injustice, and the trust of the community we're trying to serve. The rest we can teach you. I don't know what to say. Say yes. And Rosa, call me Elena when we're not in court. Rosa did say yes. And she would go on to transform how the foundation operated, ensuring that service workers weren't just recipients of charity but architects of their own advocacy. By December, barely a month after the incident, California State Senator Maria Hernandez had introduced the Fair Service Industry Practices Act. The bill required restaurants with more than 20 employees to conduct annual anti-discrimination training, establish clear promotion criteria based on merit, not appearance, create anonymous reporting mechanisms for discrimination complaints, undergo regular third-party audits. The hospitality industry lobbied against it, of course. They called it regulatory overreach and job-killing bureaucracy. But the public momentum was overwhelming. The video of Elena sitting on that bench for 17 minutes had been watched by 31 million people. The stories from service workers had created a groundswell of support. Senator Hernandez invited Elena to testify at the committee hearing. Elena sat at the witness table in her judicial robes. She'd come directly from court and spoke for 12 minutes. Senators, what happened to me was not unique. It was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a systemic problem that affects thousands of workers across California every single day. She pulled out her tablet. Since my experience went public, my foundation has received 847 reports of discrimination in the service industry. 847 workers who've been told they don't look right, don't sound right, aren't the right fit. Who've been denied promotions because of their accents. Who've been assigned to less visible roles because of their skin color. Who've been sexually harassed because they are seen as disposable. Elena looked at each senator in turn. I had the privilege of credentials, of a platform, of resources to fight back. Most workers don't. They need their jobs. They need their tips. They can't risk speaking out because they are one paycheck away from eviction, one complaint away from being fired. This bill doesn't solve everything, but it creates accountability. It creates consequences for discrimination. It creates mechanisms for workers to seek justice without risking their livelihoods. She leaned forward slightly. I'm a federal judge. I believe deeply in fairness, in equal protection, in the rule of law. But I also believe that sometimes the law needs to catch up to the lived reality of marginalized communities. This is one of those times. The bill passed committee 7-2. It would pass the full Senate in January and be signed into law by the governor in February. Elena would be present at the signing ceremony, standing beside Rosa and 5 other service workers who'd shared their stories. 6 months later, May 2026, Elena stood in the kitchen of Luminous Restaurant at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. The restaurant wasn't open yet. Lunch service didn't start until 11:30, but the space was alive with activity. Prep cooks chopping vegetables. Sous chefs testing sauces. Servers setting tables in the dining room beyond. Jonathan Prescott stood beside her, along with Rosa, now officially titled Director of Worker Advocacy for the Vasquez Foundation for Service Workers. We're on month 5 of the reform program, Jonathan was saying, walking Elena through the kitchen. Every single employee has completed the anti-discrimination training. We've revised our promotion criteria to be merit-based with clear, documented standards. And we've promoted 6 back-of-house staff to front-of-house positions based purely on skill and experience. He gestured to a young man expediting orders at the pass. That's Louis. He started as a dishwasher 3 years ago. Worked his way up to line cook. Now he's our head expediter. Under the old system, he never would have been considered for that role because management thought he didn't have the right presentation for front of house. Elena watched Louis work. He moved with precision and confidence, calling out orders, coordinating the kitchen flow, managing the chaos with calm authority. What changed? Elena asked. We changed the criteria, Jonathan said simply. Instead of subjective things like presentation and culture fit, we now evaluate based on demonstrated skills, communication, leadership, technical ability. Louis scored highest in every category, so he got the job. They moved into the dining room. Rosa pointed to a wall near the entrance. This was my idea, she said. The wall displayed photos of every staff member, dishwashers to sous chefs to servers to managers. Each photo included the person's name, role, and a quote about what working at Luminous meant to them. Louis's quote read, "This was the first job that saw my potential instead of my accent." Maria, a server, had written, "I used to hide who I was. Now I bring my whole self to work." Carlos, the line cook who'd testified about being passed over for promotion, was now listed as Carlos Mendoza, sous chef. His quote, "Excellence doesn't have an accent." Every customer who walks through that door sees these faces first, Rosa explained. They see the people who make this restaurant work. They see their stories. It changes how they treat staff. Elena felt something tighten in her chest. This was what accountability looked like. Not just policies on paper, but actual people whose lives had improved. The audit results came back last week, Jonathan said. Want to see them? They moved to a private dining room where Jonathan pulled up a presentation on his laptop. Before the reforms, 89% of our front-of-house staff in premium positions, hosts, lead servers, sommeliers, were white. Our back-of-house staff was 76% people of color. Clear segregation based on visibility. He clicked to the next slide. After 6 months of reforms, front of house is now 52% people of color. We've promoted 12 people from back of house to front of house. Our employee satisfaction scores have increased 34%. Our turnover has decreased 41%. And, this surprised me, our customer satisfaction scores have actually improved. Why does that surprise you? Elena asked. Because I don't know, I thought customers wanted the polished presentation, the Eurocentric standard of service. Customers want authenticity and competence, Elena said. Turns out those things aren't limited to people who look a certain way. Jonathan laughed, a real laugh, not a corporate one. Lesson learned. Painfully, but learned. Elena looked at the numbers. The data. The proof that change was possible when there was will and accountability. How are the other 5 restaurants in your group doing? She asked. Similar results across the board. Some better, some still struggling. But the trajectory is clear. We're not done. We'll never be done, really. This is ongoing work. But we're better than we were. Rosa added, the certification program helped too. Having an external standard to meet, having someone checking our work, it keeps us honest. How many restaurants have gotten certified so far? Elena asked. In California, 63, Rosa replied. Nationally, the program is expanding to New York, Illinois, and Washington. Elena, your foundation has changed how the entire industry thinks about equity. Elena shook her head. Not my foundation. Not my program. This was always going to happen. I just accelerated the timeline. People were already organizing, already fighting back. I just had the platform to make it visible. Don't diminish what you did, Jonathan said seriously. You could have just filed a complaint and moved on. Instead, you turned one incident into an industry-wide reckoning. That took vision and courage. It took being tired, Elena corrected. Tired of proving I belong. Tired of watching other people have to prove it. Tired enough to stop being polite about it. The Vasquez Foundation for Service Workers commissioned a comprehensive study of the California restaurant industry 6 months after Elena's incident. The findings: employment practices. Restaurants participating in the Equitable Dining Certification Program showed a 47% increase in promotion of workers of color to management positions. Anonymous reporting of discrimination increased 234%. Seen as positive, workers felt safe speaking up. Documented incidents of discrimination decreased 56% at certified restaurants. Wage theft complaints decreased 38% at restaurants with worker advocacy boards. Worker testimonials. The foundation collected 1,247 testimonials from service industry workers about changes they'd experienced. I've worked in restaurants for 15 years. This is the first time I've been promoted based on my skills instead of my appearance. Maria G., server. My manager used to joke about my accent. After the training, she apologized and asked how she could support me better. Real change. Juan R., host. I'm transgender. I used to be harassed constantly by customers and staff. Now my restaurant has clear policies and actually enforces them. I feel safe at work for the first time. Alex K., bartender. Industry impact. 23% of California restaurants had implemented some form of equity training. 11% had achieved full certification. $4.2 million paid out in settlements to workers who'd experienced discrimination. 67 restaurants publicly committed to the reform program after initially resisting. Legislative impact. The Fair Service Industry Practices Act passed and signed into law. 3 other states introduced similar legislation. Federal EEOC issued new guidance on service industry discrimination. Labor Department increased audits of hospitality industry by 42%. On a quiet Sunday evening in June, Elena sat in her garden with Sophia, who'd flown home for the weekend. "How are you doing, Memi?" Sophia asked. "Really doing?" Elena considered the question. 6 months of intense public attention. Meetings, interviews, advocacy work. Building a foundation. Testifying before legislators. Becoming, whether she wanted it or not, the face of service industry equity. "I'm tired," Elena admitted. "This wasn't what I signed up for when I became a judge." "You could stop," Sophia said gently. "You've done so much already. Let someone else carry it forward." "I could," Elena agreed. "But every time I think about stepping back, I get another letter from a worker who finally got promoted, or a mother who says her daughter feels safe at her restaurant job now, or a young person who saw the video and realized they don't have to accept being treated as less than." She looked at her daughter. "Your abuela cleaned houses for 20 years. She was brilliant. Could have done anything with the right opportunities, but she cleaned houses so I could go to college. And you know what people called her? The help. Like she wasn't a person with dreams and dignity. Like she was just a function." Elena's voice was quiet but fierce. "When Brandon Mitchell directed me to the service entrance, he was seeing me the way people saw your abuela. And I realized I have the power to make sure fewer people have to experience that. How can I walk away from that responsibility?" Sophia squeezed her mother's hand. "You're amazing. You know that, right?" "I'm stubborn. There's a difference." "No, Memi. You're amazing. And abuela would be so proud." They sat together in the garden as the sun set, the California sky turning golden orange, and Elena felt her parents' presence in the warm evening air. This was their legacy too. Their sacrifice. Their hope. She was just finishing what they started. Brandon had taken Elena's advice. He'd reached out to the Equitable Dining Certification Program in January. They'd been skeptical at first. The guy from the video wanted to work with them. But Elena had vouched for him, and Rosa had agreed to supervise his training. Now, in June, Brandon was one of 12 certified trainers conducting anti-discrimination workshops across California. He stood in front of 40 restaurant managers and owners at a hotel conference room in San Diego, and he began every training session the same way. "My name is Brandon Mitchell. 6 months ago, I became famous for all the wrong reasons. You've probably seen the video. If you haven't, I'll show it to you right now, because it's the best teaching tool I have." He played it. All 17 minutes of Elena sitting on that bench. The room watched in uncomfortable silence. "That's me," Brandon said when it ended. "Making assumptions. Enforcing gatekeeping I didn't even realize I was doing. Discriminating against a federal judge because she didn't look the way I expected." He let that sit for a moment. "I'm not here to tell you that I'm reformed, that I've figured it all out, that I'll never make a mistake again. I'm here to tell you that this work is uncomfortable, ongoing, and necessary. And I'm here because I'd rather be part of the solution than remain part of the problem." His trainings were effective precisely because they weren't sanitized. He shared his own failures, his blind spots, the moment he realized how deeply bias had shaped his worldview. Rosa checked in with him monthly. They'd developed an unlikely partnership, the server who'd documented discrimination and the event coordinator who'd enacted it. "You're doing good work," Rosa told him during one of their check-ins. "I'm doing necessary work," Brandon corrected. "There's a difference. Good work implies I deserve credit." Necessary work is just the minimum. Rosa studied him. You've changed. I'm trying to. But Rosa, I need you to understand something. What I did to Judge Vasquez, I still think about it every single day. The look on her face. The dignity she maintained while I treated her like she was nobody. That haunts me. Good, Rosa said, not unkindly. It should. That feeling. That's accountability. Hold on to it. Use it. Brandon nodded. I will. By summer 2026, Elena's story had become a case study taught in business schools, hospitality programs, and law schools across the country. Harvard Business Review published an analysis titled When Customers Become Advocates: The Elena Vasquez Effect on Corporate Accountability. The article examined how one incident of discrimination had sparked industry-wide change, and what lessons other sectors could learn. Key findings. Visibility matters. Without Rosa's video, the incident would have been handled quietly. If at all credentials create platform, Elena's status as a federal judge gave her story credibility and reach systemic approach wins. Elena's focus on industry-wide reform rather than personal revenge created sustainable change. Worker voices essential, including actual service workers in reform efforts, ensured authenticity. But the most significant impact was cultural. The phrase service in trance became shorthand for discrimination based on appearance. When someone was judged unworthy of a space they had every right to occupy, people said they'd been service entranced. Don't judge people based on their dress became don't service entrance them. The language itself had shifted. And with language shift came awareness. Came accountability. 1 year later, November 2026. Elena stood at the entrance of Luminous Restaurant on November 18, 2026, exactly 1 year after the incident. She wore the same navy dress, carried the same worn purse, styled her salt and pepper hair in the same practical bun. A deliberate choice. The current event coordinator, a young black woman named Jasmine, greeted her immediately. Judge Vasquez, welcome back. We're so honored to have you. No questions about credentials. No directions to service entrances. Just genuine welcome. Elena smiled. Thank you, Jasmine. We've reserved your table, the one by the window overlooking the river. Best seat in the house. The dining room was packed for the anniversary celebration. Not a gala, but a worker appreciation dinner. 100 service industry employees from across California, servers, cooks, dishwashers, hosts, invited as honored guests. Some wore formal attire. Some wore jeans. Some wore their work uniforms because they had to go to their jobs right after. No one was questioned. No one was turned away. Everyone belonged. Rosa served as MC for the evening, introducing speakers, workers who'd been promoted, immigrants who'd received legal assistance from the foundation, young people who'd gotten scholarships. Jonathan Prescott spoke briefly, acknowledging how far the company had come and how far they still had to go. Then it was Elena's turn. She walked to the microphone, looked out at the crowd, and felt overwhelmed by what 1 year had created. A year ago tonight, Elena began, I was directed to the service entrance of this restaurant. I was questioned, detained, and treated like I didn't belong. And I made a choice to document it, to fight it, and to use it as a catalyst for change. She paused. But here's what I want you to understand. I didn't create this movement. You did. Every worker who came forward with their story. Every person who demanded better treatment. Every ally who recognized injustice and spoke up. You did this. I had a platform. I had power. But power without action is meaningless. And the most powerful action is collective. When we come together, workers, advocates, allies, we can transform entire industries. Elena looked directly at the workers in the room. You deserve dignity. You deserve respect. You deserve to be seen as full human beings, not just the functions you perform. And anyone who treats you as less than is wrong. Not mistaken. Not confused. Wrong. This past year, we've achieved remarkable things. 63 restaurants certified for equitable practices. New legislation protecting workers. Millions of dollars in settlements. Training programs that are actually changing mindsets. But we're not done. Because every day, somewhere, someone is being judged by their appearance instead of their character. Someone is being told they don't belong. Someone is being discriminated against because they don't fit someone else's narrow definition of professional or appropriate. Her voice grew stronger. So here's what I want you to take from tonight. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. Your demand for dignity matters. And when someone tries to make you feel small, remember, you have more power than you think. Document it. Report it. Organize. Support each other. And don't accept that's just how things are. Because things change when we demand they change. Elena smiled. A year ago, I sat on a bench for 17 minutes while people who looked like me were treated like we didn't exist. Tonight, we're sitting at the best tables in the house. That's what change looks like. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. 2 years later, November 2027. 2 years after the incident, Elena received an invitation. Judge Elena Vasquez, you are cordially invited to the grand opening of Service with Dignity Restaurant, a worker-owned cooperative featuring cuisine from immigrant communities and a commitment to equitable employment practices. The restaurant was Rosa's project, funded by the Vasquez Foundation, designed by workers, governed by a democratic board of employees. Elena arrived on opening night to find the place packed. Workers from across the service industry, former employees of Prestige Dining Consortium, community advocates, legislators, and there, greeting guests at the door, was Brandon Mitchell. Judge Vasquez, he said, genuine warmth in his voice. Welcome. No questions asked. Elena laughed. Thank you, Brandon. He'd found his place in the movement, not as a leader, but as a supporter. He worked at Service with Dignity as operations manager, and his entire job was ensuring that equity was baked into every system. Rosa found Elena shortly after she arrived. What do you think? Rosa asked, gesturing to the bustling restaurant. I think it's extraordinary, Elena said. I think your abuela would be so proud. Rosa's eyes glistened. You know what? I think your abuela would be proud of you too. They stood together watching workers serve food, families enjoy meals, a community celebrate. This was what justice looked like. Not punishment, not revenge, but transformation. Building something better from the wreckage of what was broken. Final statistics, 2 years of impact. The Vasquez Foundation for Service Workers. $12 million raised 1,247 workers, provided legal assistance, 189 scholarships, awarded 43 restaurants, helped achieve equity certification. Industry changes. 247 California restaurants certified for equitable practices. Equitable dining certification expanded to 12 states. $23 million paid in discrimination settlements. Service industry discrimination complaints down 67% in certified establishments. Worker retention at certified restaurants up 52%. Legislative impact. Fair Service Industry Practices Act law in California. Similar legislation passed in 6 additional states. Federal Workplace Equity Guidelines updated. EEOC increased enforcement actions in hospitality sector. Cultural impact. Service in trance became shorthand for appearance-based discrimination. 847 news articles published about service industry equity. Original video viewed 47 million times. Brandon Mitchell's training program reached 12,000 hospitality workers. Personal stories. 2,340 workers reported improved treatment and opportunities. 456 workers promoted to management positions. 89 worker-owned cooperatives formed, inspired by the movement. Countless individuals who felt seen, heard, and valued for the first time. On a quiet morning in December 2027, Elena sat in her chambers reviewing case files. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Judge Vasquez, you don't know me. My name is Carmen. I'm a housekeeper at a hotel in LA. I saw your video 2 years ago. Last week, my manager discriminated against me. I documented it like you taught us. I reported it. And yesterday, the hotel fired my manager and promoted me to housekeeping supervisor. I wanted you to know, what you did mattered. Thank you for teaching me I don't have to accept being treated as less than. Thank you for showing me my dignity is non-negotiable. Elena read the message 3 times. Then she typed a response. Carmen, your courage taught yourself. I just held up a mirror. Keep fighting. Keep documenting. Keep demanding dignity. The world changes because people like you refuse to stay silent. She hit send, then sat back in her leather chair. This was the legacy she wanted. Not headlines, not awards, not recognition, but hundreds, thousands of people like Carmen, learning that they had power, that they mattered, that their dignity was non-negotiable. Elena looked at the photo on her desk, her parents, young and hopeful, standing in front of their first apartment in California. Everything they'd sacrificed, everything they'd dreamed. We did it, Elena whispered to them. Not perfect, but better. Outside her window, Sacramento stretched out under winter sun. A city of immigrants, workers, dreamers, fighters. A city where things were changing. One documented moment at a time. The movement continues. Because what happened to Elena Vasquez wasn't unique. It was just visible. Every day, people are judged by their appearance. Told they don't belong. Directed to service entrances, literal or metaphorical. Every day, the service that makes our comfortable lives possible is rendered invisible by the people who perform it. Every day, discrimination persists because it's profitable, convenient, unchallenged. But every day, people fight back. They document. They organize. They demand better. And slowly, painfully, persistently, things change. This is how justice works. One person refusing to accept injustice. One video documenting truth. One movement demanding change. One moment at a time. Your move. Share this story. Document injustice when you see it. Support workers in their fights. Examine your own biases. Create systems that value people over prejudice. Be the person who refuses to let discrimination happen in silence. Be the person who sees everyone's dignity. Be the change. Because the next Elena Vasquez is sitting somewhere right now. On a bench. At a service entrance. Being told she doesn't belong. And she needs to know. She does belong. Her dignity matters. Her fight is not alone. You can be the difference.